Hello YouTube family, thanks for tuning in to my videos, for those of you who do, as I try to break down the BS of our socio-political existence here on this globe. If you like the videos, please give it a like. If you've not subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel, as that will help the channel grow. And again, thanks for watching the videos. Thanks for those of you who joined me on this video. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the concept of running the government like a business. The older you are, the more likely it is that you've heard someone make the comment, "We should have somebody run the country like a business." I recently had a discussion with a coworker who had made that comment to me. We need somebody in there who'll run the government like a business. That reminded me of a Wall Street Journal article I'd read years ago. I'm currently living in Las Vegas. Back when I lived in Utah, I read a Wall Street Journal article about this very thing. And I'm sure if someone made that comment to you, and you did as I did, when my coworker made that comment to me, my initial reaction was to tell him to quantify what that means. What does running the government like a business mean? If you have someone make that comment to you and you question them the same way, please quantify. What is that? You will get the same reaction I did, that kind of frozen deer in headlights look. Because people have heard that comment made through the years, and people have made that comment, but I've seen no one explain what that means. I assume when people make that comment, they are referring to the government spending within its means. That is, the government takes in X amount of tax dollars, and it stays within those tax dollars to run government. And people, I'm sure, look at the concept of running a government as their personal life. That is, our government, most of the time, runs on a deficit, a budget deficit. That is, our government spends more money than it takes in taxes. And you always have politicians looking to increase spending in different areas, depending on the political perspective slant of the politician. And people look at that and say, if I ran my personal life at a constant deficit year after year, eventually I'm going to be in trouble. But what they don't look at is the fact that they can't print money. The government can print money. The government is constantly manipulating markets through printing of money, through the Federal Reserve's interest rates that are set. And so the government has the ability to manipulate markets in a way that you as a you as an individual do not, and corporations do not. Corporations don't print money. They make products and services and try to make money from the sale of those products and services. But I want to go through the concept, and hopefully this won't take too long, but I'm going to try and use as plain language as possible, but to be as thorough as possible to go break down why it's irrational to run the government like a business. They're two very different things. In the article I'd read years ago in the Wall Street Journal, the writer was a Republican journalist for the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal is a right-wing rag that typically reports on business. This was an article written by one of the editors, and he lamented at the start of his article that the people he has heard make that comment, "We need someone to run the government like a business," typically ends up being a Republican. He was a Republican. He lamented that it was his peers that most often made that statement. I'm sure you can find plenty of conservative Democrats who would make a similar statement because the statement to them sounds good and nobody's ever asked them to work through it and explain what that exactly is. What is running the government like a business? I mean, from a very simplistic standpoint, businesses exist to make money. Profitability. Profit. Making profit is what businesses do. It's their only goal, their only job, their only task is to make more money. More money this month than last month. More money this quarter than this quarter last year. Make more money. That's the goal of business. And the government could conceivably decide they want it to be ultimately profitable. The government could easily do that by providing no services, no roads, no bridges, no police, no firefighters, no schools, no services, and then could tax everybody at 100%. That way the government would have all the money and they have to spend nothing out because they provide no service. That would be communism, basically. The government ends up being their purveyors of everything. They own everything because they have all the money. So basically, if you want the government to run like a business, you want the government to be communistic. But the Wall Street Journal writer, years ago, he explained it as profitability versus personal value. And explained it as there are businesses that are highly profitable. The pornographic business, the gambling business are highly profitable. Most people would say those businesses offer very little personal value. However, there are government entities that can never be profitable, like national parks. Most people in this country would say national parks provide a great deal of personal value. They can never be profitable because of the extensive cost it is to maintain and manage national parks. Typically, if a national park has an entry fee, it's extremely low. So they can have as many people along the various pay scales in this country able to access it. If they charged enough money, entry fee, into a national park to actually pay for the running of the park, to pay for the park rangers who work there, the cleaning staff, the maintenance of the park itself, the conservation of the park itself, it would be more expensive than Disneyland, where you would have people having the decision, do we go to Disneyland and save some money, or do we splurge and go to a national park? You would have very few people going to national parks if they charged enough money, entry into the park, to actually not just make a profit, but to pay for the cost of that park. National parks are very expensive. And so there's never a time that a national park will be profitable. But most people would say it provides a great deal of personal value. And that's what you want from the government, is personal value. You don't necessarily want the government to be profitable. You want the government to provide personal value to the people in the country. Which is one of the points, is social value versus profitability. I mean, the purpose of any business is to maximize long-term profits. And businesses are able to have clear objectives. You've got executives at the business, you've got board of directors, you've got investors, and they're able to have clear objectives because the objective is just to make more money, to sell more product, to sell more services, whatever the business is. Whereas the government has competing interests or perspectives. You know, the government provides education for the country, public schools. They also provide the military which is protection for the people of the country and national interests. And those are competing perspectives. It's priorities. Where do you put priorities at? In America, the by far the largest discretionary spending in our government year over year is the Department of Defense. It takes over half of our budget, goes to the DOD. So our perspective for a long time now, because we spend more on defense, national defense, than I think the next 11 to 13 countries combined, our perspective, our priorities have been national defense. Even though we're really not in all that much danger of being attacked. I mean, most of our DOD money has been going into the DOD and then getting broken out to military contractors as we have pursued this imperialistic mentality of invading other countries, forcing our will on other countries. I mean, most recently, we're right now in the process of pulling military out of Afghanistan. And it's a big mess. We've been there for 20 years. It's been a big quagmire the whole time. We should never have been there. But now we're in the process of pulling military out. And so the DOD contractors are going to start losing some of the money they've been getting, because it's been a lot of money getting poured into, hundreds of billions of dollars getting poured into contractors. So we have competing interests in the government. All these different things the government provides for, such as infrastructure. Right now, you have the infrastructure stuff going on in Washington, D.C. They passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is a little under $600 billion of new spending. Not that much, considering all of the infrastructure we've got to try and maintain in this country. Not nearly enough. I mean, we have bridges and roads failing all over the country. Not to mention the human infrastructure that the Democrats have been trying to push, particularly the left-leaning Democrats, and the Republicans are opposed to. One of the reasons why the infrastructure has so much combativeness is because you have to pay for it. The proposal has been to pay for it through increasing the taxes back up on corporations and the wealthiest in the country, which right now, the corporate tax rate and the taxes on the wealthiest people in the country is the lowest it's ever been since we instituted the income tax. It's at its lowest point. And you have all Republicans and a certain group of right-wing Democrats in the Senate, and then a certain group of right-wing Democrats in the House, who, because they are heavily funded by corporations and by wealthy individuals who don't want their taxes to go up, you have this back and forth fighting over how are you going to pay for it? Are we going to spend this much? Because you have the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed in the Senate. It's waiting for a vote in the House. The Democrats in the House, the progressive Democrats in the House, have said they will not vote for it until they have the reconciliation bill, which is much larger, more robust, and includes a lot more good things for average Americans, but needs to be paid for, which would be paid for by taxes on wealthy Americans and corporations. So whereas businesses have clear interests, just make more money. For the government, it's not as clear because you have different priorities, particularly with how your political slant is. Most Republicans want to put more funding in the military, whereas more left-wing Democrats might want to put more money into education, into social safety net programs to try and help people not fall too far behind. Also, you have the issue of leadership and organization and control. In corporations, you have a board of directors, you have executives, you have management levels below that. And everybody has a clear goal, and success is clearly defined. In the private world, in the business world, success can easily be defined by looking at profit and loss statements. Did you help us make money? Did you not help us make money? Whereas with the government, it's not so clearly defined. What is success for a government? You have a majority of the country who saw Donald Trump as very unsuccessful. However, you have a chunk of the Republican Party, those diehard Trump supporters, who saw him as being very successful. When you ask them what it was that was successful, they'll say things like, he built a wall, which he didn't actually do, and now that wall is starting to crumble to pieces, and what little he did build. And certainly Mexico didn't pay for it. You have people who will say that healthcare is better now than it was under Obama, and you're like, what are you talking about? It's the same the Affordable Care Act never went away. It's still the same healthcare. Healthcare hasn't changed. Donald Trump didn't pass anything on healthcare. All they did was manage to repeal the personal mandate, the individual mandate, which required everyone to have health insurance. The purpose of that mandate was, if everybody has to buy insurance, the cost of insurance premiums should go down, because along with the elderly, people who have pre-existing conditions and health problems, you have the younger, healthier people who have no issues, who will basically be paying into the system, and their money is helping pay for the care of other people. That's just how insurance works. You also have the difference between government and business of public interest, which is, for businesses, all they care about are customers. How do we keep customers we have? How do we get new customers? If you're not a customer of a business, they don't really care about you. Whereas the government, as a public entity, has to care about everybody. Well, the ideal is they will care about everybody. The government isn't going to take care of some and not others. That's the ideal behind government. But as we saw with Donald Trump was clearly a break from normal governance, as he clearly did not care about states that did not vote for him. He cared about red states. They're the ones that voted for him. And so when it came down to there was a lack of supplies for the coronavirus pandemic, he was making statements that he's glad to give supplies to a state like Florida or Alabama or some red state that voted for him. New York, California, Massachusetts, blue states that didn't vote for him, he doesn't care about, which is a problem when you have a president who doesn't care about a portion of the country, that portion being the ones who didn't vote for him. You have the difference between profitability and achieved outcomes. Corporations they're successful if they are profitable. The government, success is harder to measure. What's the outcome you achieve through this legislation, through that legislation? You put together an education initiative. Was it successful? Was it a failure? And how many places along the government line have you tinkered with? What was the outcome? Was it a positive outcome for the country, for the bulk of the population, or not? Then you have the issue of public scrutiny. For politicians, the successful outcomes need to be achieved rather fast, because you've got the next election cycle coming up and you want to try and get reelected, so you need to have measurable success you can run in your campaigns. The public scrutiny isn't on corporations so much. There's no reporters in corporate boardrooms. There's no reporters in executive meetings in corporations in their office buildings. We don't know what they're discussing, what their plans are, this, that, whatever. With politicians, you have C-SPAN. You can sit down during the day and watch live coverage of Congress. The things they discuss, the things they argue about in Congress, and there are some closed-door meetings. You'll have Republicans get together, closed door to meet together. Democrats will meet closed door to meet together. And sometimes you'll have committees that will get together outside of public view to talk about some hearing they're going to have or whatever and how it's going to be laid out. So the public scrutiny is much heavier on the government than it is on corporations. And with politicians, you have the constant need to be able to advertise success for your next election. In the House, they're all up for re-election every 2 years. In the Senate, they're up for re-election every 6 years. And then the president, we elect every 4 years. So it's not that long that you have to start making successful moves before you're up for re-election. Right now, Joe Biden is in the first year of his first term in office. In 2024, if he's going to run for re-election, or even if he's not, if Kamala Harris is going to run in 2024, she needs to have measurable successes she can advertise on the campaign trail. If they have no success, why would somebody vote them back into office? And that's the issue you have in politics. Politics and business, very different perspectives, and certainly very different priorities. Whereas with business, you have the singular priority of making more money, and the government, you have the priority of doing the most good for the largest amount of people. And that gets all screwed up because now we have so much influence from corporations, from wealthy individuals in our political process, that how do you measure success? Politicians, so many of them are trying to appease their biggest donors, which are wealthy individuals and businesses. But to do that, it's at the expense of voters, because often what corporations and wealthy individuals want is very different than what average citizens within the country want. It's competing interests. And that's the difficult thing. You've had plenty of people who were in the business world get into the political world and talk about how difficult it is. Even if it's just running a state, it's extremely difficult. Then you have the fact of, in a business, a CEO of a corporation can typically fire people and hire new people. If a CEO hires people within the administrative structure below them and they see they're not achieving success through quarterly returns, they can say, well, I've got to let this person go. I'm going to go and hire this other person. Whereas in government, you get elected president, you can put together your cabinet, but you have no control over who's in Congress. You may be a Republican president, and both the House and the Senate may be controlled by Democrats. At that point, you've got to figure out a way to achieve some things that you want to achieve, but you've got to negotiate with people who have a different political perspective than you do. Which is why we have so much gridlock now, because neither side wants to move. It's my way or the highway kind of mentality that we have going on right now in government. And you have a declining amount of trust in government from the American people. Granted, the American people typically don't like corporations either, because they know corporations would rip you off in a heartbeat if it'll make them an extra dollar. One of the things that I've noticed through my life is it seems like, for the most part, customer service has gone out the window. I pay what I believe is an egregious amount of money for internet service. I'm in Vegas. You have limited options for internet. The business community has made it to where you have very limited options. I go through Cox Cable for internet. I'm paying almost $170 per month for my internet service. And it's not up to snuff. It's not worth $170. If I have problems with my internet and I call Cox, it costs $90-something just for a technician to come out and figure out what's wrong with their service. In addition to the $170 per month I'm paying, you've got to pay extra just for one of their technicians to come out and figure out why their service isn't working properly. I mean, that's why so many people don't like business, because business is trying to screw you out of as much money as they possibly can. And so many businesses in America right now seem to have the mentality of, just give us your money and leave us alone. Some businesses do care about customer service, and they've had success because of that. But the idea that efficiency is a uniquely private market entity, that's not true. There are some businesses that are very inefficient, but their products and services are so popular, they're able to be inefficient and still highly profitable. Whereas there are some segments of the government that run highly efficiently, despite the fact that they have no competition. That's one of the differences between business and government. Businesses, typically, you want them in a free market environment like a capitalistic American economy. You want them to have competition. That way, if they lag, the competition's going to take over and make up for where they're out at. You know. Whereas the government, you've got the DMV in your hometown. They don't have to provide the best customer service because you have no choice. You've got to go to the DMV for DMV services. And so there is a large amount of difference across the board between government and business. And just because someone is successful in the private business sector does not mean in any way, shape, or form that they will have success as an executive within the government administration. Someone could have success as a business person moving into politics, despite the fact that they were a business person before. But one of the quotes that I've seen in the numerous articles I've read, there's a bunch of articles that are going to be linked in the source data below that I read through to come up with this video. And one of the constant quotes that seem to rise over and over again is, you don't want a businessman to run the government, just like you wouldn't want to hire a politician to run your business. You know, a place for everything, everything in its place. Keep businessmen in the business sector. Keep politicians in the political sector. And the thing is, if you don't like the politicians, vote somebody else in. Someone else who has a desire for government service. Eventually, if politicians get the clue in that, oh, if I don't achieve something for the American people, I'm out on my ass, they will start to change the way they think. But as it is right now, so often it works out the way politicians expect things to work out. That the politician who collects the most money, who has the biggest pile of money to smother the airways with ads. Digital ads on the computer, on the radio, on television are the ones that win. Billboards, that's the way politicians look at it. That's why you have so much corruption in Washington, in America, because we've let too much of the business community put too much money into politics. I want to go over a few quotes. However, the first one is a meme I wanted to put up, which I found humorous because I do like the old Willy Wonka movie with Gene Wilder. So you can't run your business without government tax breaks, and you can't run your business without government tax loopholes. Tell me more about how you built your business from the ground up without government assistance. There's a lot of misconceptions with Americans, certainly, and the business community. And here is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. You had a lot of people who have brought up the problem with corporations influencing government. Thomas Jefferson was one of them, and this was a very long time ago in the early years of our country. We shall crush in its birth the aristocracy of our moneyed corporations, which dare already to challenge our government to a trial of strength. And that is to say that the government should not concede to the moneyed interest of the wealthy corporations, because even in the early years of our government, you had businesses trying to affect politics. With Theodore Roosevelt, who was the guy who put in our antitrust laws. He was the guy who said that we can't let corporations become too powerful, because otherwise you'll end up with one or two corporations in the country that own everything, and they will at that point enslave the entire country. And he warned of the real and grave evils of too powerful corporations. It should be as much the aim of those who seek for social betterment to rid the business world of crimes of cunning as to rid the entire body politic of crimes of violence. And then you had Eisenhower, who, in his memoirs, warned us about the military-industrial complex. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. Dwight Eisenhower tried to warn America of the threat of the military-industrial complex and the harsh reality they would bring to this country in their desire for war, because war is profitable for them. That's how they make money, is war. That's why we've been stuck in this quagmire in the Middle East for 2 decades, because there were so many military contractors making so much money off of it, and then taking some of that money they were getting and shoving it into the coffers of politicians. But that's the video for today. You can't run the government like a business. Government and businesses don't mix. And when you have governments having too much influence on politics, you end up with the corrupt, screwed up system that we've got right now. What we need is business out of politics. But that's the video for today. Thanks for anyone who hung around with me for the 34 minutes it took to get through it. Please leave me comments. Agree, disagree. Let me know how I'm doing. And by all means, have a good day.